Welcome back. Members of cabinet were not impressed this week when the IFP's Narendra Singh confronted government with newspaper reports on financial transactions to fund e-toll roads. Mr. Singh charged that if the project failed, government would not only have to bail out the South African National Roads Agency or SANRAL, but also have to bail out the Civil Servants Pension Fund. He also wanted to know if new plans for toll roads in Cape Town, KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng had been shelved.
The shocking real reasons behind the government's insistence to ensure that the Gauteng e-toll project succeeds were revealed in a weekend newspaper. It was reported that the Public Investment Corporation had purchased 17 billion rand worth of SANRAL bonds, and further that 89% of this purchase was made using money from the Government Employees Pension Fund scheme. Information such as this should have been made available to the Standing Committee on Appropriations during the briefing on the additional 5.75 billion rand for the Department of Transport, as well as to Parliament during the debate on this bill. One wonders why this was not done. It is now very clear that there are huge economic issues at stake. If the tolling project fails, government will not only have to bail out SANRAL, but will also have to bail out the Civil Servants Pension Fund. Minister, bail out Gauteng, and remember, KwaZulu-Natal is on the way, for there is huge opposition to additional tolls in the Durban area to compensate for the construction of the Wild Coast Road. Perhaps, Mr. Speaker, Chairperson, someone from the executive can also comment on media reports yesterday that, and I quote, a well-placed senior government source was quoted as saying, plans for new toll roads around Cape Town, KZN and Gauteng were set to be shelved.
I think it's regrettable that Honourable Singh tries to cast sinister connotations on a normal investment practice by the PIC. The PIC buys bonds to the tune of billions of rands every week, every year. And these bonds are issued by Transnet, DBSA, Eskom, and government more generally, including SANRAL. Part of its mandate, mandated investment strategy, is to invest in bonds, which are a safe investment instrument, as Honourable Singh is very aware of. There was no attempt to hide anything from the Appropriation Committee. If you asked who is invested in SANRAL, I'm sure the officials present would have given you the information. And there's no reason for us to hide about something that's open public knowledge. The financial formula that we found, Chairperson, to solve the problem around the toll road has nothing to do with bailouts of the PIC or of anybody else, but a genuine attempt on the part of government to reduce the burden on citizens and make a financial contribution from other taxes, as I will point out later today on this matter. On the question of other toll roads, that's an issue that the Minister of Transport will address.
I just wonder whether the Honourable Member, Mr. Narendra Singh, will be able to go back home to the rural areas in KwaZulu-Natal and says he stands in the National Assembly, in this House, to advocate that money should be paid for one road in South Africa, not to do roads in his own province, in his own rural area for which he stands for. We are going to spend 7.2 billion rands this year from April to build roads leading to Mr. Narendra Singh's home, which doesn't have homes even though he was in government for such a long time. They never built roads. We are going to build roads while lowering the burden of debt in Gauteng, but we will not do so. Will not burden the burden in Gauteng at the expense of the rest of the country. And you are opportunistically, Honourable Member, now advocating getting into the bandwagon, and you are going to go back home and say, yes, I stood in the National Assembly and advocated for Gauteng. What about your own roads? We are going to lower that burden, and we are at one with the people of Gauteng. The Premier of Gauteng was speaking even this afternoon. We'll do that, but will not do so at the expense of the rest of the country. And therefore, the member must stop opportunism. I understand the question. Stop the opportunism of the bandwagon of one road in South Africa at the expense of 166,000 kilometers that we must build.
Still on the tolling of roads, the IFP also took a swipe at the Democratic Alliance for its handling of the Chapman's Peak toll road and office block saga. The IFP's Dr. Oriani-Ambrosini said the DA-led government in the Western Cape had made a mistake, but Parliament had also erred in its oversight role by not protecting a famous World Heritage Site.
Making mistakes is part and parcel of the burden of governance. The ANC government, the IFP government, the DA government are all bound to make mistakes. Good governance is not about making no mistakes, but rather recognizing mistakes made, backtracking and correcting them as soon as possible. The DA government has made a mistake in the way he handled the construction of luxury office space in the World Heritage Site at Chapman's Peak Drive in Hout Bay. He made a further mistake in not listening to the unanimous voice of its own constituency in Hout Bay and the surrounding areas, opposing that project. This Parliament and the Minister of Environmental Affairs have also neglected their respective duties to ensure that national legislation and the World Heritage Site Conventions be respected. The approval for the construction was given without following the parliamentary procedures set out in national law. The International World Heritage Site Convention has been breached. Parliament has thus far not fulfilled its oversight role, and the Minister has neglected his responsibility of intervening to determine how it became possible that the National Parks Authority gave its permission for the construction without following the prescripts of the law. We call on both the national ANC government and the provincial DA government to correct the respective errors and rise to the challenge of protecting these unique national assets for the generations to come.
This week, concern was raised in the National Assembly about the alarming decline in small businesses. Mr. Ngonyama of the Congress of the People said more than 100,000 small businesses had to close their doors during the past 5 years. Building entrepreneurial skills had now become a key priority. The Minister of Trade and Industry, Dr. Davies, said a program had been launched to address the issue. We pick up on Mr. Ngonyama's statement.
The Congress of the People is concerned about studies that point to a significant decline in the number of successful small businesses in the country, a sector which, according to the Minister of Finance, employs 68% of South African workers. These are businesses that employ fewer than 50 people. This speaker makes the small business sector clearly the most important originator of jobs in South Africa. If we take that as a structural reality of our economy, we need to be very concerned about some of the worrying trends that have emerged in recent times. Also, we have to determine what the root causes of these trends and how we can reverse them. Studies reveal that between 2001 and 2011, there was a consistent number of small business, about 2 million, although there was relevant stagnation in this sector. It was only during the economic boom of 2004 to 2006 that the number of small businesses increased slightly to about 2.4 million. However, since 2006, there has been a sharp decline by 18.2%. This means that approximately 100,000 small businesses have closed their doors each year, bringing the total number of small business closures over the past 5 years to 440,000. Speaker, if we assume that the typical small business employs 12 people in addition to the owner-manager of the business, it means that a revival of this sector could potentially create 5.3 million jobs. Speaker, COPE believes that some of the root causes of this worrying trend is lack of entrepreneurial skills, which need to be a key priority in our human development strategy.
I think that success is not measured only by the number of SMMEs in existence. Of course, in turbulent economic times, I think we would expect many SMMEs to be facing difficulties, and they are more vulnerable. What we have been doing as a department is to try to focus our attention on those parts of the SMME program which we think are working well. And in that regard, we have highlighted the incubation programs which have worked well both in South Africa and elsewhere. The problem we have in South Africa is we have very few incubation programs, but I'm pleased to say that whereas we had about 31 supported by government up to now. A further 28 have now been identified for rollout by our department in the near future, and this is part of a program of trying to roll out 250 incubation programs by 2015.
After the break, we look at the question on the crisis in education in the Eastern Cape. Stay with us.